All right, welcome everybody to a new NFL season, which means it's that time. It's time for the weekly NFL podcast here, presented by Say What You Like Sports Podcast. This one here is going to be the Week One edition, and joining me on the Week One edition is Jacob over at the Football Fanatic. It's going to be a joint production for Week One. Go ahead and say hello, Jacob.
Hey Phil, how's it going?
Good, good, man. So you ready to talk about Week One in the NFL with everybody out there?
Absolutely, I'm so ready for football season.
All right, let's get into it. Yeah, I know I've been waiting for it way too long, man. Um, but let's go ahead. Let's get into it. I want to talk about the game that won't be played in Week One. I want to talk about the Miami versus Tampa Bay game that was canceled due to Hurricane Irma and was rescheduled for Week 11. So I wanted to ask you, did you think that that was a good idea to reschedule it for Week 11 since both the Miami Dolphins and the Buccaneers had a bye week in Week 11?
I mean, it does kind of make sense. It seems like it'll be a lot because the bye week, I know it's good for teams to have a week for guys who are injured to kind of have a week to recuperate and get a little bit of rest so they can come back more healthy the following week. So it will be, I feel like it would benefit them to have that, but at the same time, it made sense, and obviously we don't want them to play it in Miami with a hurricane. That's obviously safety is more important, so I think it was a fine decision. I'm good with it.
Yeah, me too. I think it completely is a safety thing, and then especially you have to think about the players' families, and you remember the whole Houston debacle, and they were actually going to play that game at AT&T Stadium, and they didn't end up doing that because the players wanted to go ahead and make sure that their families were okay. So I can kind of see it being very similar with this, and I think you should let those teams be with their families. And you know what? They're just going to have to go on the grind and play for 16 straight weeks, which is kind of rough, but I think it was kind of probably the best call. So I definitely,
Right.
definitely agree with you on that.
Mhm.
But what I do want to get into, what I can't wait to get into, is the kickoff game. The first game of the NFL season 2017. We have the Kansas City Chiefs going over to Gillette Stadium in New England. And New England is favored by 9.5 points. I just checked the spread earlier today. I
Really?
couldn't believe it was that high, 9.5 points. So, do you
Wow.
have any thoughts on that game? I think that's a pretty huge line.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be that much of a blowout. I think this is going to be a close one, and this is two of the teams that, to me, are favorites to win in the AFC. The Patriots, obviously, they won the Super Bowl last year, so they're the best team defending champs, and then they also got Brandon Cooks in the offseason, which is going to help them even more. So they're really good, and then the Chiefs last year they got to the divisional round, and I think they'll be just as good this year, if not better. So I don't think it's going to be that much of a spread. I think it'll be a lot closer than that and a hard-fought game.
Me too. I think it's going to be a lot closer. That might be one to to take the points if you're Kansas City, if you're going to bet on Kansas City. As far
Oh
as the
yeah.
game goes, I think the big key for the Chiefs is they got to get pressure on Tom Brady because it's the same deal with any team. The only time you can beat the New England Patriots, in my opinion, you have to put pressure on Tom Brady. And I do believe that the Chiefs have the personnel to get that job done because you got to remember they got pass rushers like Justin Houston, D Ford,
Mhm.
and even the old man Tamba Ali, and they can all get to the quarterback. So I think if they can pressure Brady, they'll stay in the game, and it'll definitely be a close game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I mean, you got the Patriots have so many. They got Brandon Cooks. He's pretty young. They have Chris Hogan. They have Malcolm Mitchell. They got all these young guys and talented receivers at that too. So as long as you can keep pressure on Brady and keep him from getting in a rhythm, I think that's really going to help them.
Yeah, and I think too one more thing for Kansas City, I think if they can get the pressure and they can make sure that they stay good with the pressure, I think you have the playmakers on the back end. You have Marcus Peters, he's a turnover machine, and if you can steal one
Mhm.
from New England, you got a shot. But then on the other side, what do you think New England has to do in order to ensure the victory over Kansas City?
On offense or defense?
Let's go with defense first.
Well, I think the Chiefs game. I mean, the Patriots have some really good defensive backs. They have Malcolm Butler, who they've had for a while. Then they also signed Stephon Gilmore as their second cornerback over in the off season. So their DBs are really good. So I think as their rush defense is going to have to step up their front seven because I think their pass defense is going
Yeah.
to be just fine. If they're going to have to stop the Chiefs' running game, which is kind of their focus with Andy Reid offense, it's always the running game and then the dink and dunk passing with Alex Smith. So I think as long as their
Right.
front seven can keep their running game from getting going, I think that's going to be the key to victory for them.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you 100%. You shut down the running game, you take away the short throws to Travis Kelsey, and you force Alex Smith to beat you with the wide receivers. That just sounds like a Bill
Hmm.
Belichick game plan to me. Um,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I think another key, at least on the other side of the ball, and I'll get your thoughts on this right after, but I think a big key for the Patriots offense is going to be reestablishing Rob Gronkowski back into the offense. He missed the last 8 games of the season, and Julian Edelman went down, so he's out for the season. So I really think, not just even for this game alone, but for the entire season, Brady needs a target that like he absolutely trusts, and that's going to keep that offense amongst the best in the league. So to me, I think on offense, the key is getting Gronk involved early. I was wondering what you think about that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Gronkowski. I mean, he's as long as he's been on the team, he's really been what the Patriots offense has run through. It's him and Julian Edelman, and especially now that you mentioned Julian Edelman is out for the season, that was basically his security blanket. And Rob Gronkowski, especially when he's out with an injury, so I think getting him involved, you definitely have to do that. And I think another thing that's going to be important is establishing Tom Brady and Brandon Cook's chemistry, getting that connection going.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Definitely, I forgot all about Brandon Cooks. Just another weapon these guys have. So I
I
guess
know.
we'll wrap this game up. You got a prediction for this game? Final score? Putting you on the
I
spot,
do
man.
think the Patriots. I do think the Patriots take it, but I don't think it's going to be a spread. Like I said, I think it'll be a closer game. I think maybe 27-24, 30-24, something like that. Patriots.
Not bad, not bad. I actually have my prediction. We're pretty close. I have New England 27, and I have Kansas City 21. I don't think it's going to be a
Yeah.
9 point game, but I could see a good 5 to 6 point game kind of going on
Mhm.
here. Now, the next game that I want to get into and get your thoughts on first, I'll let you roll with this one first. The New York Giants are traveling over to Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, to take on the Cowboys. New York is actually favored, even though they're on the road, by 4 points. This is the Sunday night football game. What do you see? What are the keys to victory? Whatever team you want to start with, I just want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. Did you? I don't know if how well you've been keeping up with the Elliott case lately. Did you see that his suspension still stands as of right now, but they're letting him play Week 1?
Yes, yes, I do. So at the very least, he'll be playing against the Giants. I guess apparently because the appeal decision didn't come back in a timely manner. So because put it this way, I think it has to do more with the 53-man roster because they didn't know if Zeke was going to be able to play or not during week 1 with the appeal going on. They had to keep Zeke on the 53-man roster. So I think the NFL did that because to be fair, they would have Zeke would have been on the suspended list, so he wouldn't count against the 53-man roster. So potentially, it would have cost the Dallas Cowboys, how do you say, an extra man on the 53 if he wasn't able to play. Because basically, in the end, they'd be keeping him on the 53-man roster, even though he's not eligible to play. So they'd be playing with the 52-man roster. So I think they try to make that right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I think the keys to victory I guess I'll start with the Giants. The Cowboys, if I recall correctly, they lost Morris Claiborne and what's the other guy? J.J. Wilcox, who was their other safety, and I forget their second corner's name, but they lost 3 of their starting 4 in the backfield. So I think the
Yeah.
key to the Giants on offense is they're going to have to get Odell Beckham has an ankle injury right now, but it sounds like he is going to play. So I think really what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to take advantage of, I'm assuming, the young guys who are going to be playing for Dallas in the secondary. That's going to be what's going to be good for them. And then probably for Dallas, I mean, they're going to have Zeke back, but the Giants are a tough defense. They're probably one of my favorites to have, one of the better defenses in the NFL. So I think
Yeah,
it's
I
just
gotta
with the
just
Cowboys.
I gotta agree with you on that. I think they're underrated. Underrated defense. Like I think they're top three for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that was my thought as well. They got a lot of young guys. I think they traded for a corner as well. I forget who it was, but he's supposed to press Eli Apple for playing time. I'd have to look up his name, but
Wow.
yeah. And yeah, I think the Cowboys, I mean, they're just going to have to stick with their formula, which I mean, Ezekiel Elliott on the ground. And that's going to be what's the key to them, because Giants are another team with a bunch of really good defensive backs.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that secondary is vaunted. I agree with you. I think that that the Giants definitely have a huge, and I'm going to say huge, advantage if we're just talking defenses. I think they're better across the defensive line. You know, you got JPP, you got Olivier Vernon. You know, I mean, the pressure that they can get off the edge is crazy. And I think they have a lot of playmakers on the backside of the defense. You talked about Eli Apple. Um, you know, he was a young rookie that really contributed last season. I think though that with that being a given, the Cowboys offense, in my opinion, even though some people will disagree, I think it is superior by a considerable margin than the Giants. And I think in order for the Giants to kind of make up for that, I think they have to convert in the red zone because they have big players. They have Brandon Marshall, a big receiver. Odell Beckham can pretty much snatch the ball out of the sky with one hand, so he's a red zone target. And then they have that young tight end, Evan Ingram, and he's a big tight end, and I think he has the size to get it done in the 20. And another thing, you mentioned the defensive backs that lack experience on the Dallas Cowboys, and I think they're going to struggle covering the tight end. So I think if they have success in the red zone, I think Dallas is going to have a real hard time winning this game. Now, on the other side, what do you think that Dallas needs to do besides, you know, the Ezekiel Elliott running game? You know, do you think that they're going to be able to do anything on defense and stop the Giants?
Wow, that's tough, and that's something that I think is whether they actually do it or not. I mean, that I think that's pretty much what's going to decide the game for me, because as you mentioned, they got Brandon Marshall this offseason and Evan Ingram, but they're both like 6'4", something like that. They're really great red zone targets. But I really agree with what you said. I hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, stopping these big guys in the red zone, that's gonna, as long if you can keep them from scoring touchdowns, like if they're able to stop the Giants receivers. I believe the Giants were like number 3 in pass attempts last year. That's really how their offense works. So if they're able to shut down the receivers, especially in the red zone, like you said, that's going to help them a lot.
Yeah, that'll be key, especially if they can keep them out of the red zone early. And like you said, if that Dallas running game gets going, they have the ball for the majority of the time on offense and put some touchdowns on the board. I think that's going to make Eli feel like he has to play from behind, and he's not playoff Eli yet. You know, he makes mistakes when he tries to make
Right.
the big play, and then I think they
That's
can,
what I was
you know,
going to say.
definitely have an advantage there. But all in all, what's your prediction for the game?
You know, I think if I remember correctly, you're a Cowboys fan, so I'm guessing you're going the other way
I
on this
am,
one.
man.
But
So
I
I
do
might get mad at you, but
I do. This is just before I give my prediction. I think this is going to be a really, really good game. The Giants and the Cowboys are like my two favorites to be really good, and the only reason that I think they probably won't, one of them probably won't be the best team in the NFC, is because they have to face each other, and they're both so good. That's the division
yeah,
too. The Eagles and Redskins are all really good. That's a tough division, but I do think the Giants take this one. But this one, I think will probably be a little bit less, maybe like 24 or 21. It'll be close for sure.
yeah, that's not bad,
24-21
not bad.
Giants.
I'm gonna go Dallas, and you know, call me a homer, call me what you will, but I think I think they're gonna win a close game. This is always a close game, no matter what. You never see the Giants blowing out the Cowboys. You never see the Cowboys blowing out the Giants. It's always
Not at all.
3 or 4 points all the time for years and years and years. The thing is, the New York Giants have won 4 straight against the Cowboys, so I don't see how they make it 5 straight. I just don't. Just with the back and forth these teams have, and I think Dallas is going to be motivated to really take revenge on the only two legitimate losses from last season. Honestly, they gave away that third game when they wrapped up, home field with the Eagles. So they really lost only two games last season. So I'm gonna go Dallas 31, New York Giants 27. So I think we're gonna have to go back and forth on Anchor and see who got this one later this week.
Oh yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah,
just
for
to
sure,
back
man.
up, like kind of what I'm saying, the biggest thing when I think about the two differences between this year's teams and last year's teams, the biggest move for the Giants was adding Brandon Marshall. The biggest thing for the Cowboys that I recall is losing their defensive back. So I think that's what makes the difference for me.
Yeah, yeah, tipping the scales one way towards the Giants. Yeah, can't argue there. Can't argue there that these rookies have to prove themselves. So I'll just have to hurry up and then watch the game and see how they do. But
Yeah,
now let's
it'll be a
go
good one
ahead.
for
Let's
sure.
jump forward to the Monday night football game. So week one means you get a double header. So you get two Monday night football games. We're gonna get the early game, New Orleans at Minnesota. Minnesota's favored by 3.5. This
Okay.
is going to be the Adrian Peterson revenge game. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing that I think is going to be really interesting with this game is because the Saints they had Mark Ingram, they still have him, and now they have Adrian Peterson as well. So I think Peterson probably will get more playing time just because it's a revenge game. But that's going to be something I'm really interested to see is how they're going to split time between those two because they're both really talented backs. I feel like Peterson will probably get more of a workload in just the actual carrying the ball, and then Mark Ingram will be more in the passing game. But that'll be really interesting for me to see how that goes down.
Yeah, I
Um,
wonder
and then
how there's going to be enough touches for them, to go around for both backs, especially because Drew Brees, he throws the ball 35 plus times a game. So I think touches are going to be limited for two good backs. So I'm really interested to see how they divide the carries and the passing to rushing attempts.
mhm. Yeah, I think the Saints offense, they do. I mean, yeah, Drew Brees throws the ball a lot, but at the same time, I actually looked it up. The Saints running backs, just as a group, actually scored 16 touchdowns last year, and it's just the Saints have so much volume all around. I think there can be enough, but it's still, yeah, I want to see how they differentiate the two and what the touch share is going to be.
Yeah, and on the other side, the other team, looking at Minnesota real quick, last season, man, they started off with the bang. I was doing my NFL weekly power rankings, and they were number one for quite a few weeks, and no one was arguing. No New England fans were arguing. No Cowboys fans were arguing. I mean, they were dominant, and then they fell off the second half of the season. I think Sam Bradford's, carriage turned back into a pumpkin. So, do you think that Minnesota is going to be more like the team that we saw in the first half, or more closer to the team we saw in the second half this year?
I think it's going to be somewhere in between. And I think really what happened last year is that the Minnesota defense was just so dominant in the beginning of the season. And even throughout the season, they still were dominant. But what happened is in week 6, they played the Chicago Bears, and the Bears found the Vikings' weakness, which was their offensive line. And that was something that I thought they were going to address in the offseason, but they really didn't. And that's kind of why I think it'll be kind of in between, is because they haven't really fixed the offensive line, so at least from what I can tell. And then I think teams are going to still take advantage of that, but still the Minnesota defense is just so good. I don't think that they're going to be bad. The defense is what's going to keep them in games. Um, yeah, that's my thought. And then obviously, I think Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray, the tandem, it sounds like it's going to be more of Dalvin Cook than Murray, but I think they're going to do better than Jerick McKinnon and Matt Asiata were last year.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's an upgrade too at that spot. Um, Anything else you want to touch on before we give the predictions for these ones?
I guess one thing that's interesting for me is the Saints. I thought Willie Snead was going to be their number 2 receiver, but he is suspended now for first 3, 4 games. I think it's 3 games. So it'll
Oh
be
wow.
interesting for me to see how Ted Ginn, who they signed from, I believe it was the Panthers last year, Ted Ginn, I think, is going to have
Yeah.
more of a role in the offense. So he's a guy that I want to watch and see how he performs.
Yeah, no, Ted Ginn's going to be that deep threat for that team. He's nice. If he can catch the ball, but he gets down behind defenses regularly. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think New Orleans going to have a an explosive offense like they always do. It's just a matter of what they're going to do on defense. Minnesota has a great defense. It's just a matter of what they're going to do on offense. But looking at this
Hmm.
game, I'll just throw a quick prediction out there. I don't think it's going to be too high scoring, but I'll go Minnesota. I'll go. Oh, sorry, I'm going to go New Orleans. Go New Orleans taking the game. I'll go 24-16.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that sounds about right. And I mean, part of that is I just don't like seeing the Vikings win, being a Packers fan myself. So maybe I always liked it. My
Yeah,
boss is a Vikings fan, so we always go back and forth. And it's a lot of fun there.
that's
But yeah,
cool, man.
I think it'll be something similar like that. The Saints' offense is just too good, even for how good the Vikings are on defense.
Yeah, yeah. To keep them down all 4 quarters, I don't see it. But so
Hmm.
then let's move on to the final Monday night game. We have the Los Angeles Chargers. It's so weird for me to say it. I'm so used to San Diego. So if I slip up,
I
forgive
know,
me.
right?
But the LA Chargers at the Denver Broncos. Denver is also favored by 3.5. I think this is a division rivalry. It's a dangerous game for the Denver Broncos to start the season. I can see the Chargers surprising them in this game because the problem with the Chargers through the past couple of years is health. I think the Chargers have the talent to be on par with Denver and Kansas City and Oakland, but the problem is they're usually completely injured by week 3 or 4, and then they basically fall off and
Yeah.
go back to the bottom of the division. So I think the Chargers will have some success early, but the injury bug has already hit them in the preseason. So who knows how this game's going to be? What do you expect out of the Chargers in this game or in this season?
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I actually heard Mike Clay from the NFL. His bold prediction for the year is that the Chargers are going to win the AFC West, which it sounds
Oh, that is
crazy.
bold.
I know, it sounds crazy, but at the same time, you like you said, the injury bug has really bitten them hard. And Keenan Allen is one guy in particular who's been injured for them a lot. In his rookie season, he was taken out in week 9, and then last year went out in the first week, which is really tough because when he's on the field, he's like a reception monster. He's all over. He's getting all the yards and all the catches. So I think that's really going to help their offense. They got Mike Williams in the draft, who I think he's injured. I don't think he'll be in for this game. But they have Tyrell Williams, who stepped up earlier in the year. They have Hunter Henry, who did. I think he's going to have a much bigger role in the offense this year now that Gates he's tied the touchdown records. He'll get it when he gets it, but Hunter Henry's going to be the focal point in the tight ends area, I think.
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon is back, and they have lost Danny Woodhead, but yeah, like you mentioned, the injuries have really hurt them. But coming in week 1, especially fully healthy, I think they're going to have a chance against Denver for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I can see, and I'll just throw it out right now. I'll just make the prediction right now. I think the Chargers are going to pull an upset. I can see them winning this game. Something, close. I'm going to say something around 27-24.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I think it might be a little bit lower scoring just because the Denver defense is still top notch, even though they've lost a few guys, but I think it'll still be good. But probably more like uh 20-17 Chargers. I think, yeah, fully healthy, they're
I
going to come in and upset the Broncos. And I don't really trust Trevor Simeon at quarterback, and that's my main concern with the Broncos.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, what do you think about Paxton Lynch not being able to win the starting job in the off season?
Yeah, I didn't get to see him play a lot of times, but I was very surprised because there seem to be a lot of people that are really high on him and they really think that he's a top-notch talent. But yeah, that he can't beat out Trevor Simeon. I mean, it sounds like Trevor Simeon's only there because he's familiar with the offense. And Paxton Lynch has all the raw
Right.
talent. He's just got to make it happen. So yeah, it's very interesting to me. I'm wondering if he'll take it partway
Yeah,
through the season.
me too. Yeah, Dallas was high on Paxton Lynch. I'm sure you heard the rumors of how they wanted to trade up and get him in the first round a couple of years ago when they got Dak. But they, the scouts for Dallas Cowboys actually came out, made a statement, and they said they believed that the ceiling was highest for Paxton Lynch, but that he had the longest learning curve. So they're not
Hmm.
surprised. They said, he probably won't be ready until next season. So maybe this is
Yeah,
a move
that
that's going
seems
to
to be
pay
the
off
way it is.
next year for them. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
the way I see it there. So before we wrap this up, let's talk a little bit about players to watch in week 1. Do you have any nominations for players to watch in week one as the NFL gets going?
I've got a few. I don't know if you want me to just go off with a few, or you want to go back and forth. How you want to do this?
Hey, however you want to do it, let's do it. Let's talk football.
All right. All right. I've got five different groupings here. The first one for me is Eddie Lacy. He's not with the Packers anymore. He signed with the Seahawks. And he's been kind of competing throughout the preseason for the starting job with Thomas Rawls, who was the starter last year. Rawls is out with an injury right now, so I think week one against the Packers, another revenge game. And I think this is his chance to kind of pull away with the starting job from Thomas Rawls while he's out. Second one is it's two players actually, Kevin White and Kendall Wright from the Chicago Bears, the two receivers. Those guys, I don't know. I'm curious who's going to end up with more catches, who's going to be the target in that offense. If Cameron Meredith tore his ACL earlier in the season, he was going to be the main guy. And I believe at the beginning of the preseason, Kendall Wright was the number 5. Now he's all the way up to 2 or 3. And it sounds like he's going to be a guy who's getting a lot of targets. So I'm curious to see how those two are going to work out. Number 3 would be Martavis Bryant for the Steelers. I think he was out the entire year last year with the suspension. And the Steelers really have struggled to find a good number 2 receiver. So that's one that I'd like to see how he's going to play behind Antonio Brown. There's a lot of targets up there, and Antonio Brown can't get everything. So if they can get a legit number 2 threat, he could have a really big year. I guess I'll stop there. Do you have any you want to talk about?
Yeah, something I'm going to be watching out for isn't going to be a player. I want to really keep an eye out for, I know it's going to sound so boring, but the Zebras, because the NFL converted 21 officials to full-time status. So apparently that's going to help for them to make quicker decisions, be on the same page with one another, have the time in the background with one another, give them that extra time, and they said that should help to speed up the game. So I want to see if these games feel any faster than they have the past couple of years, because I love instant replay because, more times than not, they get it right. You're a Green Bay fan, so I'm sure it's worked for you in a playoff game a couple of years ago. But, for the most part, they get it right. They get it right. But I want to see if they can streamline this process. So I'm going to look for that in week one. And other players, I kind of talked about Rob Gronkowski. I want to see if he has a big game because he's coming off a back injury. And you know what they say, back injuries you never fully recover from. So I want to see how he plays. I want to see him have a big game. And I think another player, I'll just stick with the games that we talked about earlier. I want to see how the La'el Collins versus JPP matchup is at right tackle and left defensive end, because La'el Collins is in his first start. He's played guard for his first season, and he's a left-handed player playing on the right side. So his hand that protects the edge isn't his dominant hand. And, JPP's missing a couple of fingers. So I really am very interested to see what's going on that side of the line in that game.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I guess I got 2 more. One of them, Alshon Jeffrey. He played for the Bears last year. That was another reason that I'm curious to see what the Bears receivers are going to do without him. But now he's playing for the Eagles. And I think Carson Wentz, he actually threw the 4th most passing yards for a rookie ever. So I think he's going to take even a big step up this year. He's got Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith now. I mean, you imagine, like, the Eagles, I'm pretty sure were number 1 in drops last year. It was crazy how many drops there were. So I think having guys with more consistent hands is really going to help him get even better on offense. He's still got Darren Sproles out of the backfield. But yeah, Alshon Jeffrey, I'm curious how he's going to do with his new team and whether he's going to be able to stay healthy. And then the final one, again, going back to the games that we already talked about, is Kareem Hunt, who was playing for the Chiefs. He's been a guy that I'm pretty high on and have been since the beginning of the preseason, but his hype train has just gotten ridiculous in the past few weeks. The starter for the Chiefs at running back earlier, Spencer Ware, he tore his PCL and LCL, both of them, so he's out for the entire season, which put Kareem Hunt in the starting role. So I think that's really when the hype train started taking off. Yeah. So I'm curious if he's going to live up to expectations, and also if he's truly going to be a feature back or if he's going to be splitting carries with Sharkhandrick West.
That's a good one. I like that one because I heard I heard a lot about Kareem Hunt coming out of the draft as a running back. So I am interested to see if he can take the reins and get the majority of carries in Kansas City, especially because they try to run the ball so much. So I think that's a good one. I also like the Alshon Jeffrey also as a player to watch because I really want to see how this Eagles offense looks. That's probably one of the more interesting things for me that I want to see being a Cowboys fan because I want to see the competition. A lot of Wentz,
Right.
I guess, apologists said, he had a lot of drops. The receivers weren't on the same page with him, and they're right. I actually really like Carson Wentz. I think he's probably one of the best young quarterbacks in the game today. I
I
shouldn't
agree.
say probably. That's without a doubt. but I do see that Dak played with a better line, better skill position players, better running back. So I think now we can take that excuse and throw it out the door because he's got a number one receiver in Alshon Jeffrey now. You mentioned that he's able to grow another year under his belt. So I basically I just think they're on par now as far as offensive talent, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing how far they can go on offense. And I think they're a sleeper pick in the NFC East. I really do. Everybody's talking Cowboys, everybody's talking Giants. I really think that if the Eagles can really get it together on offense, I think they can, get in there and compete for the division crown.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, and that's why I was saying earlier, this is the NFC East to me is probably the NFL's toughest division, maybe next to the AFC West. Those two for sure are my top two, and because, like you said, the Eagles are good, the Cowboys and Giants we already know are good. The Redskins I think are still going to be fine. They almost made the playoffs last year, and they lost two top targets, but they got Terrell Pryor as well. I think they're going to be fine. But yeah, Eagles, they definitely have the potential to be. Carson Wentz, I think he has a chance to take a big step up. And they had a top 10 defense last year too, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they definitely
Yeah,
dark
and
horse.
definitely. Definitely. They got a good offensive line too. Lane Johnson was out. He was suspended, I think, for a portion of the year. Chance Warmack's on that team. He was a first round draft pick at guard. So they're set. They're set on offense all the way around.
Yep, yep, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should start to wrap this up. That's week 1. Those are things for you guys to look out for in week 1. Let's see how we did on our predictions. I'm sure we'll be talking on Anchor. I'll call into your station. You can call into mine. We can see who got our picks right and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So the back and forth between us isn't over. But it was good having you on the podcast here, man. I really appreciate it. And anytime you need me to fill you in on the NFC East, that's my specialty. I'll be
Oh
happy
yeah,
to do so. I love talking football. Good luck
awesome.
to your Packers too, because I want to see you guys in the playoffs. I've had a lot of bad memories in the playoffs because of your team.
Yeah, rematch for sure. I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too, man, for sure. So before we get on out of here, you want to plug any websites, any stations, social media? Feel free.
Sure. As you mentioned at the beginning, my station is called the Football Fanatic. Listening on Anchor, that's my station. And I also have it converted to a podcast on iTunes or Google Play or whatever. It's also just called The Football Fanatic. So you can check those out. And then follow me on Twitter at NFL Fanatic POD. POD is in podcast. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much just tweet about what's going on my station and podcast. And my podcast is pretty similar to my Anchor station. It's pretty much the same thing, but I post daily on Anchor. I only actually publish it as a podcast like every third day or so when I have something major to talk about. But I'm constantly updating my Anchor station with the latest news and trades and all the stuff that's going on in that way. So, yeah, that's what I got.
Cool. Perfect, man. I gotta say, I checked out your website earlier today. I like the organization on it. It's real neat. Check it out, guys. Check it out. So, I guess that'll be it. We'll catch you guys next week with week 2's podcast, NFL Weekly Podcast. So until then, peace out.